right, thank you so much, Vishya. I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. Rachel Conway is a publisher at Elsevier, responsible for the management and strategic development of applied and theoretical linguistic journals. She works with an international pool of expert editors, authors, reviewers, and editorial board members. And then John, who can't be with us today, John Schweter is the editor-in-chief for Ampersand. He's professor of Spanish and linguistics and cross-appointed in psychology, and is the director of the Language Acquisition, Multilingualism, and Cognition Lab and Bilingual Matters at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. And finally, Professor Shaila Sultana, former head of the Department of English Language, Institute of Modern Languages at the University of Dhaka. She is on the editorial boards of Language and Society, Cambridge University Press, Journal of English Medium Instruction, Ampersand, Journal of Asia, TEFL, Crossing, Journal of Belta, and other journals in Bangladesh. Professor Sultana is also an advisory board member for Ampersand. So finally, Ampersand, why we're here today, is an interdisciplinary journal of language sciences and bilingualism. It's an international multidisciplinary peer-reviewed journal which offers a highly visible open access home for original research on applied linguistics with bi and multilingual issues at its core. Ampersand seeks to engage language scholarship traditions and collaborations between the global North and global South to foster equality and mutual benefits within and between their scholarly traditions. As such, we're launching new initiatives to encourage authors from underrepresented areas, including the introduction of a Global South mentoring scheme with support from Professor Shaila Sultana. So thank you so much. We welcome you. The floor is now yours to share your screen and present. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us and for inviting us to be here today. I'm just going to share my screen and hope that this works. Okay, let me know when you can see that full screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right, so I'm here today with Professor Shaila Sultana to present on Ampersand. So thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I think you've covered a lot of the stuff that was already in my slides, so apologies for the repetition. So this is an interdisciplinary journal of language sciences and bilingualism. It was originally launched in 2016 as a very broad scope linguistics journal to cover the whole scope of linguistics. But in 2022, we decided to give it a much clearer identity. So we revamped the journal. We gave it a strong focus on applied linguistics instead. I recruited a brand new editor-in-chief, which was Dr. Schweiter, and we worked together to recruit 5 new associate editors, along with a whole new editorial board and advisory board from all around the world. These new editors then drafted brand new aims and scope for the journal, and we now have language sciences and bilingualism at the core rather than being much more general. It's still a gold open access journal, which means that all research publications are freely available to everyone. The author's institution or their funding body will pay an article processing charge or an APC upon publication to cover the publishing costs. And then open access allows a wider variety of copyright licensing than perhaps more traditional publishing. So if you do publish in Ampersand, your research can then be reused for various purposes. So things like corpus analysis or text mining, commercial purposes. And we also have a number of new initiatives to support authors from the Global South as part of this revamp. And we'll cover those in some more detail later in the presentation. So just a bit about the editorial team. This is Dr. Schweiter. He's based at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. He's a keen advocate of open access, which is why one of the main reasons I recruited him. And he also plays a big part in the Bilingualism Matters network as well. So he's really keen to open up more opportunities for global research equality. And then we've recruited 5 associate editors. So this includes Professor McConey, who is obviously on the call today and kindly invited us to speak. And he has deep connections with Africa and the Global South as well. And then these are the new aims and scope for the journal. I'll just give you a few minutes to read this for yourself, and you can find out more on the journal homepage, which I put up there. But a couple of things to note while you're reading this is that the main focus is now on language use and communication among bi and multilingual individuals and groups, along with the real world context and impact of that communication. And we're also looking for special issue proposals. So please do feel free to contact me or contact John if you have any ideas, and we can send you a proposal form. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail later in the presentation. Okay. We offer a number of initiatives to support authors from the Global South, including Research for Life, which you may have already heard of. And this is a global programme supported by a number of funding bodies and the WHO, amongst others, and hundreds of publishers have signed up for this. It offers discounts and waivers to authors in low and middle income countries. Elsevier also have open access agreements specifically with certain institutions and certain countries around the world, which allow their authors to publish for free or with a discount. And you can find out more by either visiting the link on that second bullet point, or you can Google Elsevier open access agreements and you'll see the full list of agreements there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking for new special issue proposals, and we'll be waiving APCs for all special issue proposals, proposals submitted and accepted in 2022. So you've got three and a bit more months, and I'm hoping that we can have that extended into 2023, but I haven't had that confirmed yet. But please do contact me or John if you have an idea, and we can work with you to flesh that out. Even if it's just an idea at this stage, we can help you to find authors, find co-editors, and kind of flesh out the topics that might be of interest to our readers. And then finally, our latest initiative is a brand new Global South mentoring scheme with support from Professor Shaila Sultana of the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. And this is to encourage and support scholars through the publishing process, either scholars who perhaps are early on in their career and just need a little bit of help to make sure that the manuscript is kind of meets quality standards and to support them through the peer review process, or potentially for authors who have published widely but not so widely in international journals or open access journals and just need that extra support as they go through that process. So with that, I'm pleased to hand over to Shaila to give you a little bit of background about the mentoring scheme. Shaila, are you there?
Yes, okay. First, I'd like to thank African Studies Global Virtual Forum to create this opportunity where we will discuss the possible ways to accommodate the underrepresented researchers, academics, and scholars from the Global South, specifically in Ampersand. I'll start with my own experience as a researcher and academic in Bangladesh. I started my teaching career at the tertiary level of education in 1999 and published locally. I had my first publication, international publication, during my doctoral study in 2012, when my supervisor, Professor Alistair Pennycook, motivated, enforced, and in fact, enforced would be the right word, not encourage, enforced me to publish internationally. So within the last 10 years, I have managed to build up my publication and reach the experts in my areas adequately. Now, the question is, why did I publish only locally, not internationally? One important fact is that I did not see any of my senior colleagues publish as such. They were more occupied with development projects with British Council and American Cultural Center or IELTS marking. And I did not feel confident enough even to submit any paper to any journals, international journals. So even though these are political and personal reasons, there are other pertinent reasons which I have come to know about from my junior colleagues on my return to Bangladesh after completing my PhD. And these are the points that I want to share with you so that we become more aware of the silencing that is occurring in the global South. So when I asked my junior colleagues why they do not publish much, specifically in international journals, these are the comments that you see on the slide, that I have received from them. On many occasions, for example, the first one talks about the global audience. So on many occasions, what happens that the topics, more relevant to the local teachers, academics, or researchers are not relevant to the global readers. I can mention about communicative language teaching in this regard. In the 1980s, the communicative language teaching was introduced by the global North to the global South. And then the local education system and different development organizations run by American Cultural Center or British Council still somewhat promoted. However, if you think about the international academia has gone through the task-based approach to post-method era to trans-languaging pedagogy. So in this context, in fact, communicative language teaching has no relevance whatsoever, even though it is a very pertinent issue for local Bangladeshi English language teachers and academics. The second comment is very much related to the issue of accessibility. The under-resourced public universities, specifically in a context like Bangladesh, cannot always, buy subscription to a wide range of journals. As a result, what happens that researchers or academics are not aware of the internationally accepted cutting-edge theories. For example, when I finished my PhD in 2014, my topic was trans movement in language and education. And it was a very much a cutting-edge theory, and my papers got easily accepted in different well-reputed journals. And it was very much in fashion at the moment. But as an editor and members of different editorial boards in Bangladesh, I still receive papers on code switching and code mixing. So when researchers in Bangladesh submit papers on obsolete theories, such as code switching or code mixing, their papers immediately get rejected at the desk. The fourth point that my junior colleagues have mentioned that, and it also in sort of dovetails with the third one, since teachers, academics, and researchers do not have access to journal articles, they randomly submit their papers in journals without engaging with other papers in the journal. Sometimes the software we use, this is very commonly used software here in Bangladesh, which people use to download different journals without institutional affiliation. In many occasions, it happens that this software, in fact, do not work. For example, if I tell about myself, I could maintain access to different journals on my return to Bangladesh, as I was given an associateship for several years by the University of Technology, Sydney, that allowed me to have access to all the journals. Now that I have no longer, associated with the university through this position, I am also facing the same problem, the problem of accessing different journals and journal articles. And the researchers who try to engage with local context concerning, local theories, they are not encouraged at all. I can vouch for it, as I'm aware that, aware of these issues, as it happened to me personally. Guest editors for a journal found it difficult to identify a reviewer for my paper when I wrote concerning the colonial concept of respectable femininity in the Indian subcontinent. The reviewers, in fact, worked very hard to identify three reviewers. The editors, in fact, really struggled to identify three reviewers and, to review my paper. So they managed because, I'm already accepted as an established scholar from South Asia. You may imagine what may happen to young scholars who are yet to be known to editors. The fifth point shows the hypocrisy, with all due respect. for academia. The journals and editors who publish on translingual practices, linguicism, linguistic imperialism, inequality, and social injustice based on language reject papers based on the English of authors, researchers, and academics. Some journals provide editing services, but authors need to pay a huge amount of money. And recently, because of the financial crisis in Bangladesh, $1 in fact, has become equivalent to 115 taka, the local currency in Bangladesh. So you can imagine how much a Bangladeshi author or researcher needs to pay in order to avail the editing service. The sixth point, again, is connected to this point of financial abilities of teachers and researchers and academics in Bangladesh. The government university teachers, even though highly regarded in the society, have a considerable low salary. So as a result, it becomes next to impossible for them to publish in open access journal, paying huge amount of publication fees. And there is another issue that we have not mentioned here on the slide, but very much a contextual reality in many South Asian countries, including Bangladesh. In general, what we see that in Western academia, academics start their academic journey with a PhD degree. In other words, they have already learned the art of researching and writing by the time they start teaching at the tertiary level of education. In the context of many South Asian countries, even in Bangladesh, a PhD is not mandatory to secure a teaching position in public universities. And graduates with sound results, specifically those who secure first to third positions, become teachers right after they graduate from public universities. For example, I could become a teacher in a prestigious public university in Bangladesh without any research portfolio, only because I secured the second position in both my BA honors and MA in English degree. So in other words, academics from South Asia may not have a sound research orientation when they start conducting research for different journals and for writing different journal papers. Consequently, their papers sometimes receive very harsh criticism from the reviewers for research design and ethics and other relevant issues. So in summary, scholars from the Global South on many occasions are denied access to international academia for contextual and financial realities and politics of knowledge, I must say, very important, politics of knowledge which are beyond their control. And I believe that there is a strong necessity to help these scholars so that these young scholars from South Asia and any countries or any points of Global South, so that they become visible and audible to their global counterparts. And I'm very delighted that Ampersand and Sinfree have come forward to create this mentorship. And Rachel will now talk a bit more about this mentorship scheme.
Thank you, Shaila. So based on all of those reflections, Shaila came to us to raise some concerns about the fact that this is an open access journal, but that there still wasn't an easy path for authors from the Global South. So we had a call, Shaila, Sinfree and John and I joined this call to discuss how we can help those authors. I think, this is only one journal, it's a huge problem, but if we can make small steps with this journal, then perhaps it's something that can be rolled out much wider within the linguistics journals, or even, within social sciences journals, and maybe even, it's the kind of thing that other publishers will take up. It won't just be a very small Elsevier initiative. It is something that could gather speed if it's successful. So we've introduced the Global South mentoring scheme to encourage not only research from the Global South, but we're also hoping to encourage discussion and commentary pieces and responses. So we'll have a whole new section in the journal for these papers and really try to build up a conversation around the Global South. We have implemented a mentor, so that's Shaila in the first instance, to identify 1 to 2 authors every year and support them through the publication process. And if this is successful, we can look at bringing on more mentors more mentees. Shaila is on our editorial advisory board, so we might reach out to the board, or if you have any ideas of potential mentors or mentees that we might be able to introduce next year after we've rolled this out successfully, then I'd be happy to discuss that with you. So the author will be offered an APC, so it'll be free for them to publish unless they're covered by Research for Life already. In either case, it will be free. We'll offer them free language editing if necessary, and we'll notify the handling editors to make sure that the research is judged on its scientific merit during the peer review process. So even if the language isn't, perfect English, it doesn't matter as long as the science is there and it's, it has rigor. Then once published, this article will be promoted widely through Elsevier's international marketing channels to give the author the visibility they deserve and to really encourage them on their future research journey. So as we mentioned, Shaila has already selected the first mentee for the scheme. The article is due to be submitted by October, I believe, and then the mentee will be supported through the next steps of the publication process, all the way through, hopefully through to acceptance. And it's really exciting that we can do this. So we hope the first paper will be published in kind of early 2023, all being well. Shaila, without naming any names, do you want to give a bit of kind of background about the mentee and why you selected them?
All right, so this student is from the University of Dhaka, and she has just finished her graduation and has joined a teaching position in a private university. She has done a research study, a small research study on materials development and sustainable development. So since she doesn't have any publication as any lecturer in the context of Bangladesh, and she has very good results and she's an able candidate in terms of research and writing. And that is why, based on her university results, based on the fact that she has already gotten a teaching position in a private university, and she has already had a bit of research experience and a thesis to work on, I have selected her.
Great, thank you. So that's it from us, I think. Happy to answer any questions now, or you're welcome to contact me by email later. And if you have anything subject specific as well, I can pass that on to John to get back to you. And I'll open up for discussion.
Here, can I add one point? For example, many of us are teachers here in different universities, and we see that young potential researchers amongst the student bodies. Perhaps we can also share this information with them and tell them that they can apply when they submit the article for the journal, they can mention somewhere that they want to be considered for the mentorship program, so that their articles will be dealt separately by the journal, with lots of care and caution and support.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think once we have this first mentee through the process, we can set up kind of a workflow to make sure that happens in the future, definitely.
Yes.
Yes, and we can definitely also share this video with our listeners with African Studies virtual listeners. So, Professor Marconi, would you like to open the floor with questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Since I'm both part of the Ampersand Journal and part of the African Studies Global Forum, I'm going to pose questions, but in a slightly different way. I'm going to try and put on the spot another editor for another journal, a colleague of ours and friend, Cecile, so that she can give us insight into how her journal, Language, Culture and Society, is addressing similar issues. Cecile, do you want to come in? Mm-hmm. You're muted.
Yeah, it's a very thorny question. And, I'm always debating how to find the fine line between patronizing and really helping. And what strikes me is that the fact that you have a special section for scholars on Global South, it looks like from the outside, from the outside, it looks like a little bit as a segregationist. Sorry for using this word, but putting people in one category, basically identifying them from essentializing them strictly on the fact that they come from the Global South and put them together based on, on this common feature, makes me very uncomfortable, although I totally understand the rationale behind it. So, yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I think we thought the research papers would go in the main journal. So the mentees articles, that would be in the main journal. And then the separate section would be more for like commentary and discussion pieces, specifically around the Global South. So while we would mainly encourage authors from the Global South, it doesn't have to be authors from that region. It can be any authors on Global South topics.
Oh,
Maybe I don't think I made that clear, but I think that that would. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead, Shaila.
Specifically as I come from Bangladesh, a country from South Asia, these terms have popped out, but definitely it is open to anyone, any academic, any researcher who needs sort of a support to publish in an international journal like Ampersand.
Okay. Mohammed, how does this come across in Morocco?
Can I add something?
Oh, you can add, yeah.
Because Mohammed is, I don't know, disappeared.
Oh, yeah, we can't hear Mohammed. But Cecile, I don't, yeah, whoever wants to jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Deborah, if you want to jump in.
Okay, Cecile, yeah.
Cecile, you can jump in, yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I find the mentorship a super good idea. In our journal, Language, Culture and Society, we actually provide mentorship. We don't have a person that is specialized in it. And I can tell you that it's a lot of work. It's really, really, really time consuming. But the fact that you have established these networks of mentors, from what I understand, if I understand well, I find it a fabulous idea, and we may steal the idea from you guys.
That's okay. Just don't steal Shaila.
When you steal the idea, you must give me a lot of credit.
We will need lots of volunteers from the Global Forum, I believe.
Yes. Mohammed, did you want to try to ask your question again? And then we'll have Yamina, and then I see a hand raised. Okay. Oh, we still cannot hear. Okay, what about then, let's move to Yamina. And
yes, please.
Yamina says,
yeah,
go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this event. It's really timely, and it's of great importance, actually, by referring to the Global South. Just questioning your mentoring that you mentioned, you are taking one mentor or mentee per year. How much impact will this have when we know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of young researchers who are lost and who cannot publish in indexed journal, especially that now it's becoming a requirement to join the scientific community and even For instance, when I speak about Morocco, it's becoming a key requirement for recruitment at the level of the university. So for instance, especially in human sciences, because people can publish in hard sciences and other fields, but in human and social sciences, our students find it very difficult actually to publish in index journals because of the language of publication first, and because of their inability actually to meet the requirements. And you have mentioned plenty of them in the presentation. Shayla, I think you were the one who was presenting the requirement or the challenges people face. So for instance, the fees are a real obstacle, not only to our students, but to our professors as well. You have index journals, and especially Elsevier's charging very, very expensive costs for publishing and in their index journals. The other thing is, I just want to ask my questions and then move. So what do you mean by Global South actually? Because what does it include for you? Because the concept of Global South is still not very well defined. And if I just want to hear your definition of what you include in the Global South. Thank you very much.
Rachel, should I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
And
jump
then,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. First, this is, I think this is just the beginning, and we are taking one mentee to see how it works. But if it becomes successful, we are planning to extend the service, and then so that we can ask for volunteers, like establish academics from different parts of the world to take part as mentors, so that we can take more mentees. So this one mentee that we are starting, it's sort of a pilot. You can say that it's a pilot project, and we will see, how much time, effort, and engagement it requires. So it is sort of a pilot project. We are planning to go ahead with the bigger ones, with the more participation of scholars all across the world, so that we can support and help young scholars across the world. Now, the second issue is about the payment. Yes, I have also, I have never published in my entire professional life paying money. I have been fortunate. I haven't had to do it, but I know that many of my younger colleagues are nowadays paying money, and that is why they're engaged in group authorship, so that they can, not that they want to do the research together, only because they want to share the publication fees. But Ampersand has certain categories, and based on those categories, they are in fact giving waiver to those, to those authors. And then the last question is about Global South and Global North. I know that it sounds very dichotomous. From my perspective, Global North may have clusters of Global South. For me, any people who are marginalized by system, by power, by inaccessibility are from the Global South. But without any political connotation whatsoever, or any showing any dichotomy in these terms, we want to help those people who are in need of the support of the mentorship program. Rachel, if you want to add anything, or Sinfri, if you want to add something more, you may add.
Okay, thank you very much for the answers to my question. But don't you think that dealing with one mentee is rather, it doesn't really pay back, because you can do it for a group in the form of workshops for a group of people. That's, I'm speaking from personal experience. I was in charge of a doctoral program, of a doctoral center with 1,000 students, and we used to do it in the form of workshops for groups of students. And I think that it pays, of course, then depending on their needs, the students will come back or get back to you so that you get to them individually. But I think it will pay more by actually organizing the mentoring in the form of workshops for a limited group of people, and you can really reach more people this way. Thank you.
Okay, I think the idea here is as follows. You can have a special plan in which you have mentors and mentees, but that does not mean you shouldn't have projects in which you have got workshops in which you are trying to reach a wider audience. What you could do is you could have a lot of graduate students, and then you run those workshops. And after those workshops, you may identify from the people taking part in the workshops which of these individuals are interested in writing and producing a particular text that you may then work with them to assist them to publish. So the two ideas are not mutually exclusive, but they all share one common thing: the need to create opportunities that increase access to publishing by the wider audience. Because, and I think Cecile will agree with me here, that the nature of scholarship at the moment, we all suffer when the range of people who contribute to scholarship are limited, right? We all suffer. They mean if the range is limited to Cecile and so only, we all suffer. So we all benefit when there is more diverse voices that talk about a number of these different issues. So the argument is not so much like a Samaritan. It's not just, we're not doing it for the benefit of the global South or the global whatever. It's for the benefit, in actual fact, of the global North itself. The global North is likely to benefit more when there are more diverse voices coming from the global South. In other words, the global North will realize its full potential when the global South is publishing in a very energetic process as well, and is seriously engaged in scholarship. Right. I don't know what Cecile thinks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, I find your initiative wonderful. And I think we collectively, as editors of journals, we need to get together.
Together, yes.
You know, and we, I think it's super important. And I think we need to tell the editors, we need to set our own terms to the editors. We need to put pressure
on them,
on the editors, on the publishers of journals. And we shouldn't forget, sorry, I keep talking about the same thing, but we shouldn't forget that what we do as editors is free labor.
Yeah.
You know? And so we need to have a collective voice as journals now, and not work separate, because I think we all want to work in the same direction. So I think it's important to, you know, to launch a collective action.
Okay, so Mohammed has said in the chat, I'm going to read it really quickly. Thank you for your very informative presentation. This project is a great opportunity to encourage young researchers who need such platforms to publish. In Morocco, there are some journals that publish young and old researchers' articles. Grants to encourage young researchers is an excellent idea, but do not expect the students to pay for the service. And then he says, thank you. And then I want to hand over the floor to Anissa, who has a question.
Right, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to really say it's an amazing project you have, and I applaud it. I have a small question here. You talk about assistance for people publishing about the global issues on the global South. Does the same assistance exist for people who are publishing about the global North? I'm saying this because it seems a bit condescending that issues related to the global South require this assistance. and the ones from the global north?
It is not about assistance, it is about creating awareness. Sometimes when we see a theory, a concept not familiar to us and not well published internationally, we shun away, we do not want to engage with those theories. We want to create sort of awareness and being open to these ideas, which are nurtured and sustained. And the local knowledge, the bottom line is the local knowledge will have more accessibility, which in fact sometimes stopped at the very beginning at the desk of the editor, because they don't find any relevant international publication in relation to the local knowledge or local theories. As I have mentioned of my own experience, like I wrote a paper on respectable femininity, which is a very solid, theoretical discussions and theoretical construct in the colonial Indian subcontinent. But I got the opportunity because the editors were very open towards it, and she personally knew me and she walked the extra mile. But in many occasions, it doesn't happen like that. When young scholars send papers based on the local theories or refer to local references, which do not have international publication or international representation, the papers get desks rejected right away. So we want to stop that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, and then we have Professor Blanca in the chat who asks, the first barrier may be accessibility to the Global South communities. How do scholars get to know that there is a journal called Ampersand and it's looking for special issues? How many issues does it publish per year, and how many articles per issue?
That's a really good question. I think that's partly where the mentorship scheme came out of, because with the revamp, we brought on a whole new editorial board, a whole new panel of experts, and we're hoping that they can act as advocates for the journals in communities that we might not be able to reach as Elsevier. And it does often require that personal touch to actually find the scholars that need the support. I don't have that personally, but I rely on someone like Shaila and Simfrey to know the people that are, crying out for extra support. And then we provide the help. So it's actually, because it's open access, we do have volumes and issues, but it kind of, every volume doesn't have a cap on the number of papers, so it fluctuates every year. We don't really have a limit, and I do think that's probably going to be the future of publishing. As more publishing moves online only, we'll just reduce that cap. So I believe, off the top of my head, I think it publishes five issues a year. We're hoping to increase because of the revamp and new articles coming in. So the special issues, we are putting out calls for papers, but it's probably on listservs and social media. So people that don't have access to that or aren't signed up to, Linguist List might not be aware of that. So I would ask the editorial board and you guys who've listened to this talk to tell people who you think might be interested. And I think we will just gradually spread the word. But if you have ideas for how we can reach countries that we're perhaps not targeting already, or regions, or even just groups of scholars that might not know about the journal, then please do let me know. Because I think we're learning too.
Good. Yeah.
And then Cecile has her hand raised as well. Yeah. And just Ashraf said that was a significant query there. Sorry. And then go ahead, Cecile.
Yeah, I've got excuse me, I'm sick. I've got two questions, unrelated questions. The first, how do you deal with the imperatives of publishing companies to basically exclude papers, reject papers, in order for the journal to get higher rating? As you know, it functions like that. So journals every year ask you about your rejection data. And it's one of the key number that's gonna decide about the quality of your journal. So basically, it's not about welcoming more people, more voices. It's about keeping, the ones who are already in place to, continue the thing. First question. Second question is about genre. And maybe I can ask Sheila about that. You were talking about knowledge, and one of the things about journalists to package knowledge a certain way to be deemed, receivable, or to be deemed acceptable. And we know that this genre, scientific genre, are very Western based. So have you reflected on that, and how, how do you anticipate, or how do you deal with the issue of academic genre and expand it?
So Rachel, perhaps you can answer the first one and I can address the second one.
Yep, that sounds good. I'd have to disagree. I think some journals are chasing very, very high rejection rates. And for some journals, they have high rejection rates because the quality of submissions is low. And I think with Ampersand, when it was a broad scope journal, we kind of lent ourselves to that. People submitted because they were told they had to publish open access. So lots of papers fell out of scope. The quality was fairly poor. And we found that the rejection rate was really high. Now, Ampersand still doesn't have an impact factor. We're hoping to apply either later this year or early next year. So at the moment, we're not chasing citations, and I don't think we will be for a while. I think for now, we really are working at kind of grassroots level to accept papers which meet the aims and scope, which provide that international representation, and to kind of give authors a voice. So we're in quite a good position at the moment to launch the mentor scheme. Who knows whether that will change in the future, but I've also heard that I think Clarivate, who run Web of Science and run the impact factors, the way that they measure the citations and the way that they measure the success of a journal now is really changing. So internally, we've been told that journals have to have representative editorial boards. So if you're applying for an impact factor and your editorial board is not diverse, that's either regional diversity or even gender metrics they're looking at now, you stand a lower chance of being accepted, or they will make sure that it takes longer to be accepted to give you time to address those problems. So there is a lot of work being done behind the scenes, not only at Elsevier, but most publishers now, to address inclusion and diversity. And I think we will see that coming up, in the next few years. Hopefully that will improve across the board. But
that's good news.
Yeah, but it takes a while. And I do think that although publishers can do everything in their power to help, I think it starts at it does start with the universities, the institutions that are hiring people and publishing research to make sure that equality is there. And then the publishers, can kind of make sure that the journals reflect that equality that's happening in the field. So fingers crossed progress is being made.
Thank you, Rachel. All
right, okay, regarding the normative structure of academic writing, we are all aware of it, specifically the politics and power behind it. And we can only question it when we become someone like Sinfri Makoni or or Ahmar Mahbub from the University of Sydney. Before that, in fact, we have to play the same old game as it has been played by others for centuries. But I guess that things are changing, like forums like this one, in fact, creating that sort of discussions. And we are hopeful that these discussions will sort of have a ripple effect. And within our limited scope, we have to create the space for different voices and different ways of thinking and different ways of writing. I know, Cecilia, that we are all, perhaps we are very romantic about it at this stage. If we say that, all right, we will be able to change the system in one night, and Ampersand will be very vocal in presenting all voices, whatever way they want to share the voices. It will be a very romantic idea. So, but perhaps with our collective effort, one step at a time, we'll be able to question this sort of normative structure of academic writing that we observe in different international journals.
Yeah, sorry that I keep quoting Cecilia. Cecilia once said in one of these forums that one of the things that she has learned from the forum is that we are more effective if we are working together, right, rather than working in isolation or individually. So, for example, the journal that Cecile is working on, and they have their own ideas, if they are connected with what Ampersand is doing, and there is a conversation, dialogue between those different journals exchanging ideas, that I think will have even a bigger impact. Yeah.
Cecile, I can give one example. I saw my supervisor, Alistair, to start different papers with data. So I got hugely inspired by it and submitted a paper starting with data. And the first thing, first reviewer comment was, you have to bring the data to its located space in order to get it published. So yes, we are still, struggling with this sort of, conventions, and academia is only open to those who have already got positions. They are not yet ready to, challenge the convention for others. So perhaps we will have to work collectively to, change the situation. Yes.
I also wonder if stopping the anonymity of the reviewers
yes.
will also help to have accountability and constructing the review process as a constructive, as part of knowledge production. I think, that's what we are launching in our journal, is really to stop the anonymity of the review process. We find it's not leading anywhere. There are some reviewers who are extremely nasty for whatever reason. It's like they are settling scores for whatever reason. And it seems to me that if we stop the blind review process, it may, make people a little bit more aware. The reviewers a little bit more aware of, the collaborative aspects of, the review process. It shouldn't be a process where you kill an author, where you kill ideas. It's about bringing out the best that someone has to offer, So maybe that's also an idea that could be, pursued. I don't know.
I really like that idea. I'll look into it. It might be something that we could do, maybe trial with the mentor if they're happy to find out. But we can talk about that. Yeah, thank you.
And there are lots of issues in relation to the mindset. I can share another example of one personal experience. Few months ago, two of my colleagues, we submitted a book proposal on language sustainable development in the context of Bangladesh. One of the reviewers right away, the other two reviewers were gave very constructive feedback. The first reviewer, in fact, did not engage with the content of the proposal right away. And I don't know which pronoun I should use, he or she, because the very process, it reminded me, and again, I know that I'm being politically incorrect by telling it, perhaps a white, middle-aged, Anglo-Saxon man, I don't know. But the point, he rightly said that Bangladesh, people won't be interested to read about Bangladesh. And then there is another point in the book proposal, perhaps that you remember, that whether you will suggest your library to order this book. This reviewer put tick mark in no. Can you imagine? So this sort of gatekeeping, this sort of thinking, in fact, need to be challenged as well. Yeah.
Good.
We have one more question in the chat, and then I actually had a follow-up question if we have time. The question in the chat from Prof. Blanca is, do you have statistics of the previous articles from the Global South?
Not to hand, but it's something that I can can get. One thing to look at is that we now have Plum X metrics or Plum analytics. So when you go to each article in a journal, you can see how many times it's been mentioned anywhere apart from academia. So where not a citation, but say for instance, social media, blog posts, anywhere where it can be tracked online, that's not a citation. So I can pull kind of download and citation data, but you can see in real time how people are kind of using that research and talking about it online. So if there's any article in particular that you've seen on Ampersand or any of our other linguistics journals, feel free to have a play around on that. Or if you have any articles in mind, then let me know. But I can send you some stats separately. I don't know if, sorry, I can't remember who sent that question, but if you email me, I'm happy to talk about that in more detail.
Sure, and that was, I put it in the chat. Is this correct, the correct spelling? I'm not sure. Feel free to correct or put it in the chat so that Prophet Lunga can look it up.
I'll put my email address in the chat as well. Then, yeah, if you have any more questions, just email me.
Great. Okay, so Prof. Lunga, feel free to email Rachel, and she'll give you a statistic. So, my kind of follow-up question to what Celeste was saying relates to sort of what we were talking about in our Global South class with Professor McConey recently, which is this idea of, you know, we have a lot of this notion of bringing Southern scholars into the Global North scholarship, but how do we also bring Northern readers into the theoretical mindsets of scholars in the Global South, which might be actually very different than the theories proposed by scholars in the Global North. So for instance, the categories used to talk about language in the Global North versus the Global South might be quite different. In the Global North, we might use terms like multilingualism or bilingualism or second language acquisition or language attrition and things like this. Versus scholars in the Global South, like, you know, Penny Cook, who has talked about polylanguaging, Kanagraja talked about translanguaging, our own Sinfri McConey has talked about languaging rather than having separate languages. And so to this extent, I'm just curious, and also we also talked extensively about how in Africa, for instance, these just language labels for various languages were actually colonial constructs and really create artificial separations between languages. So I'm thinking with regards to kind of these categorical distinctions that might be more Northernist leaning, how do you propose to perhaps bring in Global South scholars? Would you consider bringing in some of these categories that might speak to scholars of the Global South? That's sort of the gist of the question. Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question now. Sorry.
Yes, Shamina.
Yeah, if you want to answer, I let you answer, and then I can take the floor.
I was just going to say, I think, sorry. I was going to say, I think that's the kind of thing that will hopefully come out of these commentary pieces and discussion pieces that we're going to start inviting. And I think what we really need is, with the mentor scheme, not only will it give that one mentee the opportunity to publish, but it will mean that anyone coming to the journal will see that there is an author from that region, perhaps at an early stage in their career, who has published, and it will give them the confidence to submit with or without the mentor. And it's like, I know that one mentee is a very small place to start, but if we can have this one author publishing and they kick off a discussion, and then we bring in discussions like the question you just posed about different commentaries and you know, the way that we frame certain things within the field, we can start to increase those discussions. But yeah, it's going to be small steps, but hopefully it's the kind of thing we will address in the future.
Great. Yamina, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask whether there is, you consider the possibility of having editors for special issues on a specific theme, where the person involves a number of authors to write on a specific theme and then lead the volume, for instance, as it is done in different other journals, and LCBA is one of them as well. You can edit a volume on a specific issue. Is it possible?
Yeah. Yeah, we would encourage that. Yeah. If you have an idea for a proposal, either you can be the guest editor, or if you have an idea but you have someone in mind who could be the guest editor, that's fine too. Or even just an idea at this stage and we can help you find someone else to take on the editing.
Or can you also consider having a theme that involves different countries, for instance, dealing, I don't know, bilingualism, you spoke about bilingualism, and I get to this, for instance, addressing the issue of bilingualism in different countries, and we have different authors from the thing. This would be really an added value because you have different perspectives on the same issue. Yeah, is this also possible?
Yeah, I think that would be great. We also have now article collections, so they're open. So what we could do is start inviting people and then build on that collection over the coming years. So it would be more of an ongoing project. We can be a lot more flexible now. But yeah, feel free to contact me directly. I can send you the proposal form and put you in touch with the editor-in-chief to take that forward.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Chanel, do you have any comments on this?
Hi everyone. It's a great initiative to have the mentoring because I know from the South African perspective, quite privileged universities we have this side, I must say, but I think this is it's a great initiative in that sense. I attended a talk about a week ago where Sarah Nuttall made a point that South African universities have, or that the value that we place on international journals should be evaluated perhaps in terms of promotion for promotion purposes and so on. So I do still think that we need to interrogate the idea of the international journal. Are we not part of that as global South countries? Yeah, so I think it's just a conversation to have in terms of just interrogating this idea of the international journal. And yeah, looking at our own journals as well in South Africa, that's quite rigorous as well. But yet, when we go out for promotion purposes, emphasis is placed on the idea of the international journal. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very, but sorry, Finfrey, I didn't pay attention that you wanted to speak. Sorry about that.
No, I'm just sort of trying to reflect where I think I stand on this. I want to put aside the international journal and focus on South African journals. The problem the South African journals have is that the question that one has to ask is whether the intellectual elite in South Africa allows the publishing of a much more diverse range of South African articles. In what way do journals like, let's say, the Southern African Journal of Applied Language Studies and Linguistics, to what extent is it responsive to publication from different aspects of South African society? That I think is an issue that needs to be addressed within the South African system as well. And then, yes, I think the issue about international journals is that one should not deify international journals because they've also got their strengths and weaknesses. But the South African situation is complicated by the fact that there are certain journals where if you publish, the university is given a particular subsidy. So the South African educational system has indeed created its own hierarchy of journals. So once the discussion goes about publishing internationally or locally, you need to examine that particular mechanism through which certain funding is given when you publish in particular journals. Then my third view about this, which is slightly confused, is I think for any career trajectory, a mixture of the two is helpful. Publishing locally is good. Publishing internationally is helpful. You need a combination of all these different in order to be able to make your impact. You can't make it, I can confidently say, if you're just publishing locally. You are not relevant at all if you're just publishing internationally. So you need a combination of these two, because there are certain ideas that you may have which may be picked up locally, which may not be picked up internationally, and vice versa. So my advice is you need a judicious selection of the outlets for your publication, which include both local and international outlets. That's
I fully agree with you, Prof. I think that what you are right in saying that I think I base my argument mostly on the subsidy arrangements that are taking place in South Africa. That there is a higher subsidy for international journals, and that is the reason that most scholars would prefer to publish internationally. And you made an interesting point now. You said that South African or local journals should be more responsive or are more responsive. So I'm thinking this is an interesting topic or point that are local journals seen to be more responsive, or is that their responsibility to be responsive? And then international journals is where you can explore theoretical perspectives more. So I mean, we can also talk about that. Why is it that you can't also be responsive in an international journal? So what are those ideological things that happen at the bottom with these different categorizations of journals? I'm just picking up on that the word that you used, responsive, and I'm just problematizing it a little bit in terms of how these journals see themselves. But that's just from my side. Thanks.
No, I said that I'm not sure whether the South African journals are responsive towards the local dynamics of the issues that they are addressing. In other words, in actual fact, I'm saying that the South African journals look to the global north rather than look to the global south, right? Right. That is the argument I was making, that what is interesting about them is that they want to be acknowledged in terms of the global north, even though they are South African journals. Hence my argument that they are not necessarily receptive to local local traditions of scholarship within the country that they are situated in. They see themselves as an offshoot of international scholarship rather than a product of local scholarship. But that then complicates the issues about global north and global south, that you can have journals situated in the global south which are global north in orientation. That's what I think I was trying to say.
Okay, so we have a comment from Tiboho, which I'll read, and then we have a hand raised. So Tiboho says, thanks to presenters and Penn State team. I see increased platforms collaboration that can double the space and impact of both producers of knowledge. I look forward to widening breadth of dissemination of knowledge. The synergy of working together strengthens the position of the Global South to be recognized by Global North. We look forward to more benefit to more writers and readers. Oh, and I also wanted to add just quickly from Dr. Akpome, who added in relation to the conversation with Chanel, the question remains, what is an international journal from a South African point of view, is it a journal based in Pakistan, Nigeria, etc.? And then Domicile, sorry, I'm so sorry. Let me click.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Domicile Kiza has her hand, their hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Prof. Goni, I'm thinking that one of the main reasons why we tend to look to what is called, I don't want to use the word so-called, but what is called international journals, to a very large extent, I think it has to do with the system where we find ourselves, where you, Department of Higher Education, you want subsidy, you have to publish. You have to publish in one of those. I was listening to everything that you were saying right now and how good this journal could be for a paper that I've just finished. I know it could fit that well, but I will not submit it. Your journal is not recognized by the South, which means I will not get, we are working within those constraints where you know where you're supposed to take your work, but then if it's not going to be recognized in terms of the funding, in terms of the promotion, so what's such a beautiful journal that you know it's relevant to your topic, but again, it's not, there are no returns, so to speak. So I'm just highlighting what Prof said, that these are the constraints that we South African scholars work within.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think it means, and I agree with Domicile, because young scholars, even in we are a new journal and we face the same problem. Young scholars don't want to publish with us because, you know, we are not yet rated, etc., which means that the changing the publication structures actually is not an end in itself. We need, it can be an entry point, but we need also to change the ways in which
funding mechanism.
Universities functions in terms of promotion and stuff like that. And somebody reminded us, the university doesn't exist independently of us. We are the university.
Yes.
Okay. And that's something we can bring to the table. And we shouldn't wait for the university to change its criteria for promotion, tenure and promotion, you know, so.
Yes, you're right that we have to be intellectual activists in this sense, that the university, unless pushed to see the world differently, will always continue to operate in the way that it knows best. If, for example, accredited journals which are funded, whether if that is easier for them to make judgments for promotion, they'll just stick with that. But the promotion criteria are made by people. And we need to be able to make cases that there are other different journals. It may take time, but we need to make those cases, right? In as much as we're trying to make sure that we widen the number of people, increase the number of people who can be published, we need simultaneously to put pressure on the different institutions we are working with to make changes within those systems in terms of criteria, recognition, and all that. Because if we don't do that, then we will continue. We won't make much progress. We won't make much progress. And the responsibility doesn't lie with anybody else. It lies with us because we are part of the university, right? We are the scholars who are part of that university, right? And
Okay, so we have, go ahead.
Universities are prone to change. You can put pressure on them to change certain parts of them, not everything. You can put pressure. For example, like now, the PhDs are written in different formats. In some cases, you can say, oh, present in terms of different articles, or it can be one long piece of work. So the universities change. They may change slowly, but they are open to change.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Yamina and another question from Dr. Adeola Agoke. So Yamina, did you want to ask your question?
Okay, yes, please. I just want to refer to the situation, for instance, in Morocco with respect to recognizing global North journals. For instance, we have restrictions and we have requirements our students, doctoral students, have to meet by publishing only in index journal. And of course, these journals you mentioned in Pakistan or Nigeria are not recognized as trustworthy journals. So this is a real issue. And our colleague, I can't remember his name, mentioned that we should publish, Dr. Makoni mentioned that we should also publish at the national and international level. But the problem is that when you have a scientific file for instance, for a promotion or something, it's rather what we look for are publications at the international level. And now recently, our Ministry of Higher Education has set requirements for recruitment at the level of the university, setting that they look for experience at the international level and articles published only in indexed, high impact indexed journals. And of course, we know that this is a real challenge for especially students in human and social sciences, because of the language of instruction, it's Arabic or French, and these are not very widely, of course, there aren't many journals, indexed journals in these languages. So you see, there is a problem, as you mentioned, with the requirements and policies at home in our country.
So what we need to do is to have a special issue that talks about all these issues in Ampersand.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, we beat you up because we are preparing a special issue on that in our journal.
Oh, okay. So we can have a second one.
I mean, if you want to contribute, and maybe we can have a partnership, we out of the box.
Can you please share with us the name of your journal? We would like to.
Language, Culture, and Society.
Oh, that was language. And the link to it, because I can actually share it with our students and colleagues.
Yeah, I'll share it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, so what
we are not in competition, you know that.
No, of course, I know that. What is the deadline for submitting papers to this special issue?
We just started, so that's gonna be next year.
Okay, so
there's
still time.
All right, so I just want to make sure we have time for Dr. Adeola Agoke to ask.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I came late. I was teaching and I quickly finished teaching and came around. So one thing that I am really concerned about, especially when we think about publication here in the US versus, the global South generally, I want to quickly call our attention to the challenge we have in terms of how the university views publication in new journals versus established journals, high impact journal. It seems like little attention is paid to the quality of paper that is even published in new journals? Because it seems what is really looked at is what is the name of the journal, what impact, what, you know, that's what is really like, seems like the big deal. But how about young scholars who are trying to, you know, climb up the ladder in their career, and they still need to, you know, put their work out there, or some publications are even rejected? Do you just put them under your pillow, or publish it elsewhere where your work is valued and is well accepted? So the question now is that silver lining of publishing in high index journal versus the quality of paper. So maybe the criterion should not just only be like, what kind of journal are you publishing for your promotion to be reviewed or for tenure and all of that, but also the quality of the paper. Because I've seen situations where publications in high impact journal are being challenged, questioned, even in the field. So what's going on? Why do we have all this questioning, yet scholars who are publishing quality work in, you know, lower impact journal are not getting credit, or their work are not necessarily being recognized? So I just feel this is also worth bringing up.
Yeah, it is. Recently, I was engaged in writing promotion and tenure guidelines for African studies. And we included a line that ran something like this, that we recognize for promotion publications in established journals and in newer journals, because there may be more space for publishing innovative research in newer journals than in more established journals. That was an attempt to speak exactly to the problem that you were talking about, that in some cases you have very creative research which is difficult to get. It will be very difficult for it to be accommodated in the so-called established journal, but it may find a space in newer journals. So we had to recreate, we had to be creative in terms of defining the criteria. But I get your point. That's what we had to do in order to, because we were faced with exactly that problem. What do you do with innovative, creative work, which you know this is high quality, but it will never be published in established journals? So we said, oh, we accept newer journals as long as the work is innovative. Yeah. Right.
Thank you so much. And just to let you all know, Prof. Figueroa has put in the chat the information for her journal, Language, Culture, and Society, and she's put a link there. It says, check the editorial of our first issue. It is an unapologetically political journal for social change. And then, Prof. Makone, did you maybe want to summarize before we move on to our after party?
Yes, I think this has been a very successful conversation in which we had an opportunity to focus on issues about publications. And as we all know, publications are one of the key issues, one of our key responsibilities. And I'd like to thank Rachel and Shaila for taking the lead in this. And if you want to follow up, please get in touch with Rachel and Shaila. Or if you think that you want to have another discussion on this particular topic, please get hold of Vishna and Kim, and we can schedule another discussion on publications or publishing in globally next year. Right. Vishna, Kim, thank you very much for this. And Rachel and Shaila, thank you very much. Now we are in what is called the after party. In the after party, you just raise your own questions. You don't have to